What up, TZK Potters? Welcome back to the program. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Happy Tuesday. Bob and I are back with you. I'm your host, Scott Guasco, joined by my man, Bobby Lamarco, kicking off another mini-series. We have two left of our AFC, NFC, NFL free agency wish list breakdown kind of manifestation. Bob and I have been doing predictions over the last handful of shows. If you haven't yet caught the rest of our predictions, now a lot of players have landed, so we finally get to see where we were right and where we might have missed and why. You can check all that out right here on the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel, available on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter as well. Bob and I are going to be back tomorrow, Wednesday. Long recap. We're going to have a full episode that'll be available on the podcast. We're going to have an entire free agent breakdown. So we haven't covered every single move yet. We haven't talked a lot of offensive linemen. We haven't really talked any defense. But tomorrow we're going to have a full free agency breakdown. So I know that you've probably heard the news, but you can get our perspective on it as well. So tune in tomorrow evening for that breakdown. On this one, we're doing a quick breakdown of the AFC West. We're talking Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders. Now, again, last week we did a lot of these mini episodes and not very many players had moved, so we had a lot of prediction room. Well, fast forward about 4 days here, and all of a sudden, a lot of players have stuck and they are in their new places or they've returned. So we kind of a hybrid episode on the AFC West. And then tonight, this evening at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, Bob and I are going to be back for the NFC West. And we're going to cover the Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, and 49ers and their moves or outstanding players as well. So a lot of big moves have happened over the weekend, of course. A lot of big-time names, of course, Tom Brady, coming back out of retirement, things we haven't covered yet. We're going to save a lot of those big nuggets for recaps for tomorrow's episode when we break down all the free agency. So we're not getting into that yet, but tune back tomorrow so that we can. Whew. All right, Bob, big time intro. I know we want to get into this, trying to keep these quick hitters. Again, we're talking AFC West, who's landed, who's still yet to go, who's been resigned. We're talking Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders. Let's get it.
Yeah, so first off, we got to talk about Russell Wilson going to the Denver Broncos. It's huge for this landscape. We'll do a bigger deep dive tomorrow. That trade sent Noah Fant to the Seahawks and Drew Lock. But Sky, give us a general overview. What's happened so far with the Denver Broncos? Who's still available? And your thoughts on those players?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Russ coming over is huge for all the wide receivers. Noah Fant does leave, but Albert O gets another bigger opportunity there. Everybody wants Javonte to break out. I'm with you as well. But look, Melvin Gordon, as of this show, is still a Denver Bronco, sort of. He has not left yet. He is a free agent. Some expect him to leave. Most expect him to return. Now, for fantasy circles, everybody wants him to leave, obviously, because we want Javonte Williams to be Javonte Williams. For NFL terms, Bob, I hate to jinx the fantasy industry. It just makes sense to me to bring back Melvin Gordon. Now, he's not cheap, so financially it doesn't make sense, but bringing Russ in immediately makes you a contender. You're going to have to compete somehow with the Chargers, who have been overloaded. We'll talk about in a second. Obviously, Mahomes and the Chiefs and the Raiders are getting a little bit better as well. So for me, man, I'm going to keep it kind of boring on the first one here. Melvin Gordon returning to Denver. I don't want that to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. Thumbs down. I'm with you. Unfortunately, I do see it happen. One other move that could shock NFL and fantasy is if somehow Christian McCaffrey leaves Carolina, which there's been a couple murmurs about a trade. They need a big-time quarterback. Maybe they're bringing Watson. Maybe he's part of that trade, whatever. If that happens, Melvin Gordon going to Carolina, to me, makes a lot of sense. He'll get all the work. That makes a lot of sense to help Chuba Hubbard. That's the only spot that I would like to see him by himself, but I do think he returns to the Denver Broncos.
So when I'm looking at this, and actually I'm gonna speed things up a little bit, and when I'm looking at the next two teams, I'm going to talk about the Chargers and the Broncos together based on team need. When you look at these two teams, probably two of the top 4 to 5 skill position groups, when you're talking about tight end through wide receiving core, I mean, these teams both go 3, in some cases 4 deep at receiver. They both have young tight ends in Donald Parham and Albert O that they're excited about. And they both have their mainstay quarterbacks and a solid running back. So when it comes down to it, it's kind of boring to say this, but these guys need to solidify the offensive line. Both these teams, by the way, have plenty of cap space. Both are over $20 million right now in effective cap space, according to Over the Cap, which means they can go out and get their guy. So Morgan Moses is probably the prized right tackle right now, along with Trent Brown on the free agent market. Now, Brown's been dealing with injuries. Brian Bulaga, who's a Chargers right tackle, just got cut. because he can't stay healthy. So I know Chargers fans might be a little hesitant here. So I think it's an arms race because this is the glaring spot. Both these teams have a mainstay at left tackle. They both have some nice pieces in the middle. They're both not good on the right side. So I think that's where this is key. So I think both these teams can slide in, take Morgan Moses, take Trent Brown, complete those offensive lines, and let's get cooking because I think these offenses are going to be awesome to watch in 2022. So, Sky, let's jump down to those Chargers. Let's talk a little bit about some of the free agents. Where have these guys gone, and where do you think these guys will go who haven't gone anywhere?
Yeah, great call. Great call on the offensive line because now you're protecting Justin Herbert, who's your franchise guy, obviously for the Chargers, but now Russell Wilson coming in as well. One name I didn't mention to backtrack just for 1 second, we'll cover tomorrow. Teddy Bridgewater, not big for fantasy football, but did move on to the Miami Dolphins if you missed that move. He went there knowing he would be the backup to Tua. So he's open to being that. He's been a second string guy. He's been a starter. I think he's a good clubhouse dude. So that's a good move there for the Dolphins behind Tua. But that was another move there concerning the Broncos. All right, my Chargers, man. I'm full head of steam, dude. I've been all over. I'm getting kind of obnoxious on Twitter about my early Super Bowl favorite picks, man. Look, nobody saw the Bengals coming out of nowhere last year. I'm super duper serious. Everyone knows I'm a Duck homer. I'm a Herbert homer. I'm a Chargers guy. You're in you're in San Diego where the Chargers used to be. I'm a California kid. I would love to see the Chargers actually make a run, and I really do think they could do that. They retain Mike Williams. A lot of people thought he would leave, get wide receiver 1 money, go be a number 1 somewhere. He's cool being a 1B, maybe a 2 behind Keenan Allen. No problem. He gets the bag, stays with the Chargers. Jared Cook, I mean, he's just kind of there now. I think he still moves on potentially to the Jags. They could maybe use a little work behind Evan Ingram just because of health concerns there. So we'll see what happens. But for the Chargers, man, they've done a lot of work on defense. We don't talk a lot about defenders, but J.C. Jackson coming in is massive. Couple of D tackles, massive. You're right. They do need to upgrade that offensive line, but I think they're going to be just fine. So for the Chargers, there's not a lot to talk about that they haven't already done. I would like them to solidify that right tackle move, and then we'll see what happens with Jared Cook. But otherwise, man, I am all aboard the Chargers Herbert train, dude. I'm serious, and I do think they can beat the Chiefs overall. I think they're going to beat the Broncos. They're better than the Raiders for sure. I think they're going to make a run in the AFC.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it's this division is going to be just a fun. And let's talk about the next team, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. And as I took on my GM hat, this is the most easiest one for me, and I think this is a slam dunk pick, and it's Jarvis Landry. Go get yourself Jarvis Landry on this team. Talk about the perfect complement to Tyreek Hill in that receiving core, a guy that can get you yards after the catch, that can play inside and out. Because the thing I love about Jarvis is he plays about 50-50 inside and out. That's what Tyreek Hill does. He'll kind of bounces in and out. So Jarvis can play with him both ways. But I also like the fact that putting Jarvis on this team gives them a veteran, reliable number 2 receiver instead of dealing with the inconsistencies of Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson, and Mecole Hartman. But I think what this also does is this allows you put Mecole Hartman back in the deep passing game. The yards, the ADOT for Mecole Hartman was like 7. And that's not the type of player with his speed that I would like. I would like to get him vertical in this passing game with Tyreek Hill. Now you can put Jarvis Landry in those short to intermediate passing game when you need an outlet. They have Travis Kelce doubled. I love this. Make it happen. It will be fantastic for fantasy. And I think this would be Jarvis Landry deserves it. Let's get him an elite quarterback to play with. So I do love this. But let's jump down to some of those Kansas City Chiefs free agents because there are some receivers still on the move. We got Byron Pringle and Hartman staying. You got Demarcus Robinson's a free agent. So talk to us a little bit about these Chiefs. Where do you think these guys are going?
Yeah, again, I mean, Pringle and Robinson are kind of sleepers. Like, they're tough when you have such incredible offenses and, of course, an incredible quarterback and play caller. Like, are these guys as good, like a Cedric Wilson, who's going to go get paid as a 4th string wide receiver for the Cowboys? Are these guys going to go get paid because of, their potential, or is their potential because of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in this offense? So it's just easy for me, man. Like, the Bears still need help. I think of all the regular teams. The Lions need another wide receiver. The Jets could use some help. The Falcons, of course. So I don't really have specific teams for those guys. Jerick McKinnon is a guy that fell off the radar for 2 or 3 years with my Niners, goes to my Niners, gets the bag, hated the move when he came over, nonetheless, made out of glass, hurt 2 years in a row, leaves, goes and plays like 5 games for the Chiefs last year down the stretch, balls out. This is exactly what we wanted to see when he was backing up Adrian Peterson back in the day in Minnesota. We saw a lot of that upside as a handcuff. He got his work finally. I would love to see him, man, go to the Commanders. We just saw J.D. McKissick move out of town. Everybody's happy for Antonio Gibson, and I am too, but he's had a tough time staying healthy. They need that passing downs back. Antonio Gibson can catch the ball, obviously. He was kind of a hybrid wide receiver coming out of college. I'm not saying he can't handle that role, but to keep him healthy, they don't want him playing 80, 90% of the snaps. So a guy like Jerick McKinnon, you also do not want to be on the field too often. Splitting those guys 70-30, I think helps the entire club. I think it helps a guy like J.D. McKissick and potentially Antonio Gibson to stay healthy too. So for me, Jerick McKinnon, I'm going to cherry pick off the Chiefs. I like him going to the Washington Commanders.
All right, let's start with the last team. It's the Las Vegas Raiders, and with Josh McDaniels coming into town. Listen, Josh McDaniels for years allowed Tom Brady to kind of operate in that short to intermediate passing game. He's got Darren Waller, he's got Hunter Renfrow. Brian Edwards could be taking another step in his third season, but the loss of Henry Ruggs was felt. Deshaun Jackson at age 34 was not getting it done. Zay Jones just left in free agency. And I think a player that can get relatively cheap that fits a perfect need for them is Will Fuller. Now, the Raiders do have some salary cap left over. They still have room to sign players. And this team, I think they really could use a lid lifter, and especially a guy like Will Fuller, who's now coming off another injury. He could potentially come really cheap and do like a 1 year, like $9 to $10 million, and they can have a vertical threat who, by the way, for a short strip before his PED suspension, was operating as a top 10 wide receiver in football and fantasy football. So I think Will Fuller fits a perfect need for what they need, and they could have a vertical threat to go along with the Hunter Renfros, the Darren Wallers, the Edwards of the world. So I think this is a fantastic fit for the Raiders. So let's jump down to these Raiders free agents. Some notable guys, obviously, like Rashard Barber, Mariota, those are some guys still out there. So what's your thoughts on these Raiders free agents and where are these guys going to go?
Yeah, we already saw Zay Jones move on, and I got to stick with Marcus Mariota. I mean, again, I'm a duck, right? He was Justin Herbert before Justin Herbert for the OGs, set college football on fire, Heisman Trophy, everything else. He's been riddled with injuries, didn't have a chance. Tannehill comes over to Tennessee, beats him out of a job, and then Ryan Tannehill keeps the job, and they move on for Marcus. In the limited time Marcus has been able to play, whether Derek Carr's been hurt or they've had a hybrid play, he's producing and going well. He's not going to be that number 2 overall pick pedigree that people want him to be, but they are going to be able to get him. They are going to be able to get him some opportunities. So for me, I don't know that this will actually happen in football terms, Bob, but this makes the most sense on a number of reasons. If I'm the player, which I've been trying to take the player's hat in all of my discussions, if I'm the player, I'm from Hawaii, okay? This matters. I'm from Hawaii. I've been on the West Coast my whole life, right? Went to Oregon, played in California. I want to stay on the West Coast. Seattle Seahawks makes the most sense for me, all right? There's a lot of talk that Seattle might just sell the farm. They've obviously gotten rid of Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, and they're looking to move on some other names. Maybe they're trying to make a lot of room for Deshaun Watson. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think there's other fits for Deshaun Watson. So for me, keeping Marcus Mariota on the West Coast, bringing him up north to sit with the Seattle Seahawks makes the most sense. He gets to say West Coast, so he's as close to home as you can possibly be, with Hawaii being out there in the Pacific. And he's a nice stopgap. So they can draft a quarterback. They still have Geno Smith. They could bring in another kind of, journeyman backup if they need to for depth. But Marcus gets another opportunity on like a 2-year deal or something to prove it. If he does well, they re-sign him, or he can move on too. So football terms, if I'm Marcus, I want to go to the Seattle Seahawks. But that's a really tough division, Bob, which is going to be rough. But for me, it just makes sense for Marcus to go up to Seattle. All right, y'all. We keeping it quick here on these quick hitters. Appreciate everyone tuning in with us this afternoon. Again, this evening, come back to us. We got one more quick hitter before we have a full NFL free agency recap episode tomorrow evening. It'll be our hour-long big podcast. Tune in, drop your comments in that show. But tonight, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here on the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel, we're going to have the NFC West, Cardinals, Seahawks, Rams, and my Niners. Who is left already? Talk about some of those big moves, and then who is yet to leave. How do we feel about it from the team perspective and, of course, the player perspective? All right, y'all. This episode and all episodes have been brought to you by the Believe Networks and BetOnline AG. We'll be back with you this evening for the NFC West. Appreciate y'all hanging with us on all these quick episodes. For my man Bob, I'm your host, Sky. We'll catch you tonight.